Welcome back to Wagon Wheel Homestead. Today I'm giving you just a small peek into our life here on our homestead in Nebraska. We're going to make some fluffy sourdough pancakes, some homemade vanilla extract. We're going to make a hearty meal of sourdough pasta and some sourdough chocolate chip muffins. So if sourdough is your thing, you definitely want to stick around for today's video. There will be links to all of the recipes on this video down in the description box below. And we're also going to milk the cow, do some chores, and just have a fun time together on the homestead. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel, as we will be teaching you lots of ways you can grow a simple and sustainable life on a modern-day homestead for yourself. The first recipe I'm going to share with you today is my favorite fluffy sourdough pancake recipe. It is similar to a fluffy crusties style pancake, only it's made with sourdough, so it's much healthier. To this bowl, I'm adding 3 cups of flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, 1.5 teaspoons baking soda, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 3 tablespoons of honey. You can also use sugar or whatever other sweetener you would like to use. This recipe is very flexible, and I like to mix it up the night before so that I can have breakfast on the table in the morning without any prep time within 15 or 20 minutes. This is also a really good way to use up a lot of sourdough discard. So I am putting 1.5 cups of sourdough discard into these pancakes. This is a large family recipe, so if you want a smaller recipe, you can cut it in half, or you can freeze these for a quick meal later on. I'm also adding 2.25 cups of buttermilk, 3 eggs, I like to use a Danish whisk to mix up things, especially with sourdough. It does such a good job. And I'll put a link to one of those in the description box. Adding in 3 teaspoons of vanilla and 3 tablespoons of fat or oil. And in this case, I used melted beef tallow. You can use olive oil, melted butter, melted coconut oil, anything that suits your fancy. And then I'm just going to cover it with plastic wrap and leave it sit on the counter to ferment overnight, and it will be ready to put right into the skillet first thing in the morning. This is one of my favorite times of the day, when the rest of the family is usually still asleep. The birds are singing outside, and I can spend a little time in the kitchen making a hearty breakfast. So all I have done is put a little butter in the skillet. I like to use a cast iron skillet for cooking anything with sourdough if possible. Sourdough and cast iron seem to have been made for each other. The even heat of the cast iron really brings out the beauty in the sourdough. So after putting a little butter on the skillet, I just drop the pancakes right in using a ladle, and I'm always careful to cook them on a medium-low heat. I like to serve the pancakes with a side of eggs. Sometimes I do scrambled eggs, but this morning I'm just doing regular over easy eggs. And again, I like to do most of my cooking in cast iron. The trick to being able to cook eggs in a cast iron skillet without them sticking is to use plenty of fat or butter, preheat your skillet, and then also to have a well-seasoned skillet. And I have some tips and tricks on how to prepare your skillets for seasoning that I'll be sharing on this channel later on. Then after the pancakes start developing some bubbles on the top, you can flip them over, leave them for another minute or two, and then pop them right out onto a plate. You can stick them in the oven to keep them warm, but I find that these cook up quickly enough that they're usually still warm by the time everyone gathers for breakfast. Then I just add some more butter to the skillet. I will put a link in the description box below to this skillet. It's a 2-burner cast iron skillet that is absolutely amazing. I use it almost every day. Time to take the eggs off. Multitasking is a good skill to learn in the kitchen. More butter to the egg skillet. We're thankful for our Jersey cows. We milk 2 Jersey cows, and we make all of our own cheese and all of our own dairy products, and we're very thankful for them because our family uses a lot of butter. It's always nice when it can be raw butter straight from the cow. And as you can see, I'm just popping some more pancakes right into the skillet. I've had a few people ask me if leaving these pancakes out overnight to ferment is safe with adding the eggs, and it most certainly is, because you're putting them in an environment with active sourdough starter, and that's going to take over the fermentation in the recipe, and no bad bacteria is going to have a chance to grow overnight, so it's perfectly safe. So we have a very large pantry, and I will put a link to the tour of that for you here. But what I did last year is I saved some of the syrup from the apples that we canned in our orchard. And so today we're having our pancakes with apple syrup. I just put a little cinnamon and sugar, some cornstarch in that, and thickened it up. And now I'm putting some more butter on the pancakes, and we're going to serve it with that apple cinnamon syrup. These pancakes are really good with raspberry jam. We like them with peanut butter and applesauce, and of course maple syrup is a favorite. The next recipe I'm going to share with you is my favorite easy homemade sourdough pasta. And to this bowl, I am adding 4 cups of flour, 6 eggs, 1.5 cups of sourdough starter, and a little bit of salt. You can mix this up in a stand mixer if you choose, but I like to be able to feel the dough, and it really doesn't take much time to mix it up. The nice thing about sourdough pasta is you can mix it up ahead of time and let it completely dry for either long-term storage or just to throw in your soup or whatever meal you're making as a quick thing later on, similar to what you would do with boxed pasta. But today I'm just mixing this up while we finish up breakfast before we go out to do the chores. So it's going to sit on the counter and let the dough relax and let it ferment a bit, and then we will cook it up for lunch. You want it to be a Play-Doh-like consistency, so you just work it until you get that. If you need to add a little more flour, you do. If you need to add a little bit more sourdough starter for some more moisture, you can do that also, but I find most of the time it needs a little more flour, which is fine. This is a large batch of pasta. If you don't want to make as much, you can cut the recipe in half, or you can just make the noodles and cut them out and hang them up to dry. And once they're completely dry all the way in the middle, you can put them in your pantry and they will store for up to a year. So you could actually have a big pasta making day and get a whole bunch of pasta made, and then you would have it. for future use. I'm just going to cover this again with plastic wrap and let it sit and rest. Something else that I did was I made vanilla extract, and I just needed to get it done, and so I thought I would show you right quick on this video. I am just splitting the vanilla beans with a knife, and I'm putting them into a couple of quart jars. I put about 10 or 15 vanilla beans in each jar. And the reason you split them is to bring out the inner goodie of the vanilla bean so that it can really infuse with the vodka. This is just cheap vodka. Don't worry, it doesn't hurt anybody in your recipes. It cooks or bakes out of your recipes, but you just pour cheap vodka right over the top of your vanilla beans. Put the lid on, set it in a dark place like your pantry for a few months, and you will have the most beautiful homemade vanilla extract. One other quick thing I'm mixing up before we go out to do the chores is my sourdough chocolate chip muffins. I often do this. I often get up in the morning and get all of the food started for the day. We have a nice big kitchen and our table is right nearby, and I can usually supervise the children eating their breakfast while I get things started. And multitasking like this is what helps me accomplish so much, even with homeschooling my 5 children. So to this stand mixer, which is a Bosch, by the way, and it's absolutely my favorite. I make so much bread, so many things in this. I use it every day. I will link it down below. I am adding 1 1/3 cups flour, 1 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1 cup of bananas, and you notice I'm not mashing these, I just throw them right in and the mixer will mash them, whatever is fastest and easiest. Half a cup of oil. In this case I'm using melted beef tallow. You could use olive oil or melted coconut oil or butter, any kind of fat. 2 eggs, 3 tablespoons of buttermilk, and 1 cup of sourdough starter. I mix that up and then I add in half a cup of chocolate chips. And again, I could bake this right away, but I just had time during breakfast to mix it up. So I'm just going to mix it up quick and then just leave it set, which will give the sourdough time to ferment the additional flour that we've added, so it will have greater digestibility and health benefits because all the phytic acid and stuff will be broken down in this recipe. And so I'm just gonna mix it all up, let it sit, and then I'll bake them fresh for lunch and we'll have them as a dessert. I like to buy as much of my dry goods from Azure Standard as possible, and these are the chocolate chips that I got from Azure Standard. They are so much healthier, and it's nice to have them in bulk because then you don't run out. So I just put the lid on and leave it be. Now it's time for chores. We are milking 2 Jersey cows, as I mentioned, and we also have 1 other cow that we just put calves on. And the kids are always here to help with chores, which is such a blessing. It teaches them such good work ethic and how to handle the animals. We get about 5 gallons of milk a day from our 2 Jersey cows, and the kids milk 1 cow and I milk the other. Jerseys are super sweet. Then we're back to the house and it's time to strain out the milk. This morning's milk is going straight into the cheese pot, and we're going to make a batch of Gouda cheese. But first I have to get all the rest of the milk ready to go in the pot, and that means skimming off some of the cream to make butter. Gouda is a full-fat cheese, meaning you want to leave some of the fat on there, but these Jerseys put off so much cream in their milk that I don't need to leave all of the cream on, so I save some for butter. After I get the kids started on some of their schoolwork, I take a quick minute to roll out the sourdough pasta and let it rest and dry a little more before cutting it for lunch. If you don't have time to do this, that's fine. You can just roll it out, cut it, and put it right in the pot of boiling water. But the longer you let it rest, the better. And the more flour that you add underneath your dough as you roll it out also helps so that it doesn't stick to the counter. Your dough may have puffed up or risen just a little bit depending on if you used active sourdough starter or discard. You can use either one. And you can cut the sourdough pasta and hang it to dry as noodles or as sheets, just depending on what you have time for. Today I'm just cutting it into sheets because I only have a couple minutes here. And then I'm going to hang it up on my pasta drying rack and let it dry for an hour or so until I'm ready to come back and cut it into noodles and put it into the pan. But again, you can cut it into noodles. You can also run it through a pasta machine. I have a pasta machine on my KitchenAid that's a pasta cutter, but it's sometimes a big pain to drag it out. So sometimes I just get out my pizza cutter and cut out the pasta, and it's just really simple. I'm always amazed at how many things we can make from just flour. Flour and water is really amazing. You can make bread and English muffins and regular muffins and pasta. So now I'm just going to set this to dry and down to teach some music. Right on when we get there, okay? Pay attention. Okay. And back to the cheese pot. I have added the culture and the rennet, let it set, and now it's time to stir it gently. And I can do this while I am supervising some of the more hands-off schoolwork. So that works out really well. And back to lunch. We're done with school and the kids just have a little bit of music. I teach my daughter violin and my son mandolin, so they practice some of that in the background while I finish up the pasta and the muffins, and I can help them as they need. So I'm just cutting the small sheets of pasta. You can make pasta any size and shape that you want. You can even leave these nice big sheets and just lay them out in a pan for lasagna also. You do not have to pre-cook them if you're going to use them for lasagna. But today we are making spaghetti, and we're going to have it with our home canned spaghetti sauce, which I will teach you how to make later this fall when it is canning season. We grow all of our own food here on the homestead, except for our flour and our sugar. And so we make all of our pasta sauce out of our tomatoes that we grow in our garden. There's those beautiful sourdough noodles. Sourdough noodles have such a great flavor. They have a nice tang. And if you use sourdough discard, they're super sour. If they are made from active sourdough starter, they're more of a sweet and mild flavor. Also browning up some of our homegrown ground beef. We have our own herd of beef cattle we are blessed to raise, and so we can also provide ourselves with most of our own meat. Also, we get corn from local farmers here. We live in an area where we can easily access corn, and so we put that up in our freezer every year. There's the home canned spaghetti sauce. It takes 2 quarts to feed my family, and Cooking from scratch does take quite a bit of time and make a fair amount of dishes, so we usually try to get 2 meals out of 1. So we're eating this for lunch, and we will also have leftovers for supper. I just stir the sauce right in with the hamburger to make a simple meat sauce. The sourdough noodles will be done after about 4 to 5 minutes of cooking. You don't want to overcook them, and you can always take one out and test it to see if it's done. Now back to the muffins. Let's get them in the oven so they will be ready for dessert. I like to use paper muffin cups. It saves me from greasing my pan, keeps the muffins together a little better. And I use a cookie scoop, and I just scoop the muffin dough, or muffin batter rather, right into the pan. This is an amazing muffin pan that a friend of mine referred to me, and I'll put a link to it down in the description box. It makes 24 muffins at a time. And into the oven it goes at 325 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes, or until they are golden brown on top. Now I have a bunch of hungry kids, so it's time to plate up our sourdough pasta. Add a bit of meat sauce. And some fresh corn. And I'm grating up some Asiago cheese that we made. Adding that to the top, and there's our meal. Let's check on the muffins, see if they're ready for dessert. They look so good and they smell amazing. It's best if you take them out of the pan and put them on a wire rack to cool. You can store these in an airtight container on the counter for a couple of days, or you can easily freeze them for later. Thanks for coming along today. If you make any of these recipes, please comment below and let me know. You can tag me on Instagram at Wagon Wheel Homestead 21. And remember, all the printable recipes are available at wagonwheelhomestead.com.